Hello, my name is Linda. Today's art lessons is about the time in sequence, which is about the words to describe what the actions happened in time. First of all, we have two words, when and as soon as. So I have this example. I'll phone my uncle when I get home. So the action of phone the uncle will happen after the action of getting home. Or we can have another example is, as soon as I get home, I'll phone my uncle. The meaning of these two examples are pretty much the same, but for as soon as is more of something immediate. We have another example is, when you finish this exercise, you can go home. So it means that the action of going home is the result or follows the action of finish the exercise. The fourth example is, you can go home as soon as you finish this exercise. So it's emphasized more of immediate action going home after finishing the exercise. We can see that for when and as soon as, after these words, we can use the present tense, like in this case, get home, or we can use the present perfect tense. But we don't use the future tense, like will do something after when and as soon as. Okay? When you want to express two things or two actions that happen at the same time, then you have the word while. For example, Pat got ready while I cooked dinner. So it means that Pat was getting ready and the action of me cooking dinner, two actions happen at the same time. So that's when you describe something that happened in the past tense at the same time, and you can use the word while. Or you can say, I saw him just as I came out of the office. So the action of seeing this person happened right when me coming out of the office. So you can see that with while or as, sometimes people say just as, to emphasize more of the immediate action. Pretty much, describe two actions that happening at the same point in time. We can have the example, the accident happened while I was on my way to work. So for these ones, you can see that the action of going to work was the process, and then something happened in the middle, so you can use that word while as well. The action of the accident that happened, that thing that happened, actually happened at one point in time in the process of me going to work. Okay? So that's about two actions happen at the same time. You can use while and just as or as. Now, if you want to describe one thing that happened after one another, then you can have the word then or afterwards. Remember that for afterwards, you have letter S after the word afterward, because I know that many Vietnamese students, when you write and then you forget that S letter, so remember that afterwards, not afterward. Okay? We have the example, we met the others in the cafe and afterwards, we went to the match. So this action of meeting each other in the cafe happens before the action of going to the match. Okay? We have another example. I finished my homework and after that, or afterwards, I played some computer games. It's pretty much the same way of using the word after that or afterwards. Just remember for me, afterward with S at the end. Okay, we have other two words to describe, the sequence of actions. We have after. After my visit to New York, I decided to have a rest. So the action of going to New York happens before the decision of having a rest. The word has the contrast meaning with after is before. We had something to eat before we went out. So pretty much the contrast meaning with after. In this case, the action of going out happens after the action of, eating together. So we can see that for after and before here, in this case, after goes before a noun phrase. In this case, before goes before a clause. Well, you can use after and then a clause as well. It doesn't matter. Now, with these ones, you can use after and before. Before the ing form of the verb, for example, after visiting New York. It's pretty much, you can change this example. So instead of saying after my visit New York, or you can say after I visited New York, I have visited New York. So in this case, you change the noun my visit to visiting. So you change it, in this case, a noun, but the verb visit, you change it to verbing. And then you have after visiting New York. In this case, remember that after before we had the example of a clause, we went out. But you want to change it to verbing, you can say we had something to eat before going out. So remember that went is the past form of the verb go. So when you change it to verbing, it should be infinitive, go, and then change to going, not wenting, okay? There's no such thing as wenting. There are some important words that you need to use, especially in essay writing. They are the words to describe a sequence of action. You know, one happens after another, and then after that. So we have the word, first of all, to describe something that happens initially, you know, before anything else. We had a great holiday. First of all, we stayed in St. Maurice. So first of all, sometimes you can use firstly. So pretty much same meaning with first of all. That's something that happens, you know, before anything else happened. We have the word then and after that. We have talked about these words before. Then and after that, we drove down the coast for a few days. So you can use then or after that is fine. And here we say then and after that and then clause. Okay? So that makes a whole sentence. To describe something that happens in the final or lastly, you can say finally. We went back to Switzerland to visit friends. So finally has the same meaning as lastly. Okay? Or in the end. All these words have the same meaning. Okay? Okay. Sometimes you can use afterwards instead of after that. And remember for me, this S letter that Vietnamese students always forget. I have the example. We had a couple of drinks, then afterwards we went back to the flat. So you can see the sequence of action here. One happens before another. In this case, you use afterwards, and then you can use the word then as well. So you can use both of these together. Now, you can use eventually or in the end instead of finally, as I said in this previous slide. The weather was bad and the traffic was awful, but eventually we got there. So eventually here, describe an action is like the sequence of the others. It happens like in the end. For example here, although the weather was really bad, the traffic was awful, but they still got to the destination that they wanted. Okay. In essay writing, or sometimes even when you write a paragraph, if you want to describe a sequence of reasons, like, you know, one reason is, another reason is, you can use these words. Okay, an example is, why can't we buy the new photocopiers now? Photocopiers is the machine that you make copies. The manager answer, firstly, we haven't got enough money. Secondly, the new models are not available yet. And thirdly, the ones we have will be okay for at least 6 months. So you can see the word first, second, third in here that happens right in the sequence of order. Remember that you can say these words to show orders with li or without li is fine. It means you can say first, we haven't got, second, the blah blah, third and something else. Or you can say firstly or secondly. It doesn't matter. It's the same, okay? Another structure to show the sequence of action that I want you to remember is for one thing, something happened, and for another thing, or and for another. We have this example. What's wrong with that washing machine? Washing machine is the machine that you use to wash the clothes. The answer, well, for one thing is too big to go in the space, and for another is very noisy. So you can see that the speaker here used for one thing to describe one reason, and then and for another for the second reason. So it's pretty much the order is like first and second. Okay? Now the word anyway. Well, I normally use this word, so we can't go to that club because it's too far. Anyway, I'm not a member. So in this case, anyway is just to continue the conversation, either with a reason to support your sentence or something else like totally different meaning. In this case, they can't go to the club because it's too far. So that's one reason. Anyway, I'm not a member. So it means that the thing that the person is not the member of the club is another reason that they can't go to the club. So anyways, in this case, adds more reasons to the action of not going. Sometimes I can say anyway to continue a conversation. For example, we were talking about time and sequence, the words about time and sequence. I was talking about this, and certainly I was explaining to you about present tense, for example. If I want to go back to the topic of time and sequence, I can say anyway, and then I continue with the topic. So that's another usage of the word anyway. Okay, let's go to the exercise to see how well you remembered the lecture. I have the first exercise with 8 sentences. I need you to underline the correct words in the brackets. Sometimes if both answers are correct, I need you to take on both of the answers. So normally we have 2 words in the brackets, and I just want you to underline one correct word, all right? So now I'll give you some time to do this exercise. Have you finished this exercise? Okay, let's correct some of these sentences for you. The first one, we can have lunch when or as soon as we have finished this. So the action of having lunch will happen right after the action of completing something. So in this case, you can see that with when as soon as, they have the same meaning to say, something will happen after one another immediately. So you can use both of these words. The second sentence, I'll give them your message as soon as I get or will get there. Here you say that here you see that they use as soon as. Do you remember what I said when I talk about as soon as and while and when? Remember that you just use the present tense or the present perfect tense instead of will. So in this case, you will underline the correct word is get. Well, let's move to another sentence, maybe number 4. We must go to that gallery before leave or leaving. So you see that here you have the word before. After that you have the choice of the infinitive or the verbing form of leave, not a clause. Okay. So remember that after the word before or after, you can use the verbing. So that's leaving. Okay. Number 5, I had problems at the shop, but eventually or finally, they gave me back my money. So you can see that they use eventually and finally, the same meaning here. So you can choose both of them. Okay. For other sentences, you can check out the lecture notes to finish it. Okay. For the next exercise, we have 10 sentences for you. What I want you to do is you will complete these sentences in a suitable way. Normally, after each clause, you will have a word to describe the time or sequence of action, and then I need you to put another clause, pretty much complement the meaning of the previous clause in it. Okay, I'll give you some time to do this exercise. Okay, are you all done? Let's check these ones. Well, pretty much is about your own ideas. I'll just give you some suggestions for some sentence. Number 2, we had a game of squash and afterwards. So you can have an action of doing something after the action of having a game. So, well, maybe after a very aggressive game, you may want to go for a swim. So I may say, and afterwards, we went for a swim. Number 3, I'll meet you as soon as. So the action of, the second action will happen like more immediately after the action of meeting someone. I would say in this case is as soon as I arrive. So as soon as I arrive, I'll meet you. Okay? For the other sentences, you can make up your own ideas. Make sure that you use the right tense or the right forms of the verbs. For example, you have, I must remember to lock the back door before leaving. So you can have this idea of using verbing instead of using a full clause. Okay? Another exercise. Alright, the final exercise of today is you will need to add a final sentence starting with a suitable link word or phrase that we've learned, okay, to each of these dialogues. So we have 1, 2, 3. We have 3 dialogues for you to complete. Remember that read the dialogues carefully and make sure that you add a sentence starting with a word about the sequence. Okay? Just some time to do this exercise. Okay, have you finished all these 3 dialogues? I'll just give you one example of the first one. These dialogues is, why do you want to stay in this evening when we could go to Carl's party? The answer is, well, for one thing, because my ex-boyfriend will be there and I really don't want to see him. So we can see that for the previous sentence, we have for one thing. So you can see that with the words for one thing, it normally goes with another one that we've learned from the lecture. Do you used to remember what it is? Yeah. And then we have and for another thing, or you can say and for another reason. Maybe I have lots to do. Okay. So remember to spot out the words that you need to use to kind of suit the previous sentence. In this case, we have for one thing. So another linking word that goes with this one is for another thing, okay? For the other 2 examples, is just go through the lecture notes and you can totally finish this one easily. So today we've learned about the words to show time sequence, such as when, while, as soon as. Remember to use this one with present tense or present perfect. The words to show the sequence of actions like firstly, secondly, thirdly, or the words to show something happened in the end, like finally, eventually, or in the end. Okay? So thank you for your attention. I'm Linda, teacher of Youth English School.